The Second Age, the Age of Betrayal. With Aenarion's death, many elves looked to his son, Malekith, to lead them in this new age. However, a few raised their voices against this course of action. Some princes recalled the unwholesome rumors surrounding Aenarion's court and feared what mark might have been left on a child raised in such climes. In the end, the doubters prevailed, and Belshazzar of Tiranoc was elected. Malekith took the decision with good grace and was the first to swear fealty, even though resentment ruled his heart. Morathi, however, was not so sanguine. She ranted and railed against the iniquities heaped upon her son. Malekith soon departed overseas, and in his absence, Ulthuan was beset by new travails. With the threat of war lifted, many elves became selfish, indulging their heightened senses with ceremonies dedicated to forbidden gods. From the ancient, incense-choked temples of Nagarythe, cults of luxury, pleasure, and excess spread unrest across the 10 kingdoms. Belshazzar seemed powerless. Princes, caught in the grip of the cults, began to whisper that the Phoenix King was weak and an usurper besides. Whilst Belshazzar floundered, Malekith travelled the world. In the newly founded city of Toralessi, he met and married Alasara, a priestess of Liliath. At that time, Toralessi was the eastern frontier of the Elven Empire, and the constant threat of orc hordes and the chaos beasts of the deep woods ensured that there was work enough to sate his warrior's soul. It was in such battles that Malekith made common cause with the dwarves, whose civilization was then spreading westward from the mountains. Soon, Belshazzar had little choice but to recognize Malekith's deeds and appoint him ambassador to the dwarf High King. In time, Malekith grew restless and resumed his travels. He searched for his father's armor upon the Blighted Isle and stood transfixed before the altar of Cain. He journeyed to realms that history has now forgotten and brought war to the despotic kingdoms of the East. In the frozen north, Malekith discovered a dread city of impossible age, and within its ancient vaults he found an ageless iron crown imbued with the blackest of sorceries. This circlet of iron awoke a dark curiosity in Malekith, and from that day forth the prince turned his will to studying the forbidden depths of magic. Absorbed with his studies, Malekith returned to Toralessi. Alasara rejoiced at his return, but as his obsession became plain, she soon became wary. Worse, where once she had seen Malekith's destiny as a shining line of silver, his fate was now hidden from her. One night, a month after Malekith's return, Liliath finally sent Alasara a vision. The next morning, Malekith awoke to find Alasara gone. At first, he searched long and hard for her, but soon his obsession with magic returned and drowned her memory in its dark waters. Malekith returns. Malekith soon took ship westwards to Ulthuan and his stolen birthright. It was now a realm in turmoil, and many of its princes looked to him as a potential savior. Malekith accepted gladly, vowing to exterminate the forbidden cults. He took to his work with a ruthless enthusiasm. Month by month, he announced fresh victories, yet Always ultimate triumph seemed out of reach. Thousands of cultists were captured, but more always took their place. When Malekith discovered Morathi was the chief power behind the cults, he publicly renounced her and ordered her imprisonment. In secret, however, mother and son schemed to further their shared cause of Bel-Shanar's downfall. In the end, it seemed that nothing short of outright war would quell the rising tide of decadence. Thus did Malekith ask the Phoenix King to convene the Council of Princes at the Shrine of Asuryan on the pretext of requesting control of Ulthuan's armies. Yet, even as the princes gathered, Malekith set his true plan in motion. Unbeknownst to the others, Malekith's armies had begun to march, their ranks bolstered by depraved cultists. Oblivious to the peril that descended upon their lands, the princes arrived at the shrine and listened in horror as Malekith declared Bel-Shanar to be a cultist, a claim that was not easily denied, as the Phoenix King had taken poison when confronted. The princes were not swayed and denounced Malekith as a murdering traitor. Just then, agents from Nagarath broke into the shrine and attacked the princes. As blood spilled across the floor, Malekith strode into the sacred flames to seize Asuryan's blessing. He screamed as the fires stripped away his hair, skin, and flesh. Malekith could no longer endure, and with a final shriek of agony, hurled himself clear. Abandoning the battle with the princes, his disciples took up Malekith's smoking form and fought their way clear, leaving carnage in their wake. Civil War. As Malekith's followers fled north with his ruined body, Morathi took command in his stead. Though Malekith yet lived, his body was all but broken and still blazed with Asuryan's flame. He could do little more than watch as war erupted across Ulthuan. This was a conflict heavily stacked in the insurgents' favor. Nagarath's legions had learned well from Aenarion's warrior creed. Iron discipline, backed by fear of their leaders, drove them onward. Only a united Ulthuan could have hoped to defeat such a host, and Ulthuan was near leaderless. The armies of Nagarath moved swiftly, seizing many of the vital passes across the Anuli Mountains, separating the inner kingdoms of Ulthuan from the outer kingdoms. With them came many vile monsters that lived within Ulthuan's magic-riven mountains. The other kingdoms knew nothing of the danger until the hosts of Nagarath besieged their cities. In Tiranoc and Aenarion, Morathi's agents infiltrated the ruling families and, through sabotage, kidnap, coercion, and the threat of assassination, ensured the princes of these lands bent to her will. The hour of Malekith and Morathi's victory seemed near, but the surviving princes had not yet given up hope. In their minds, there was only one elf who could defeat the armies of Nagarath, Imric of Caledor, and he was hurriedly elected to the position of Phoenix King. While Imric rallied the armies of the other elven kingdoms, the rulers of Nagarath acted to forestall their foes. They sent word to sympathizers and agents in Safari, a realm renowned for its mages. Some of these mages had been tempted by the power of dark sorcery and subverted to the cause of Nagarath. Titanic magical jewels tore the land of Safari apart as sorcerer fought mage, yet for all the power of the sorcerers they could not prevail and were forced to flee Safari and seek refuge in Nagarath and the kingdoms its armies now occupied. There was betrayal all across Ulthuan. Even in Caledor, a land thought incorruptible by many, a priest of Vol named Hotek secretly forged weapons for the legions of Nagarath. When he was discovered, Hotek fled and sought sanctuary within Nagarath. Aided by renegade sorcerers, Hotek then constructed a suit of armor for the crippled Malekith. Unable to quench the fires set into the prince's flesh, Hotek fused the newly forged armor directly to his body. Clad in a rune-etched skin of black steel, Malekith could once again lead his armies. He was no longer the Prince of Nagarath. Now and forever, he was the Witch King. Where the Witch King led, victory followed. However, for all the guile and ferocity of the hosts of Nagarath, the kingdoms of Ulthuan endured. The new Phoenix King, who had taken the honored name of Caledor, fought a cunning campaign of ambush and counterattack. Sapped by this constant hit-and-run warfare, the Witch King's armies advanced, faltered, regrouped, and attacked again. For a quarter of a century, neither king could achieve the crushing victory he needed, though both had their chance on the field of Malador. There, the Witch King's legions had the advantage of numbers, and could well have routed their hated foes. Alas, at the moment of victory, Caledor slew the Witch King's beloved black dragon Sulek, pitching Malekith into the midst of a Phoenix Guard regiment. Though the Witch King cut his way clear, the day was lost, and the armies of Nagarath withdrew once more. As he fled Malador, the jeers of the victorious elves burning in his ears, Malekith's patience snapped. He knew then the one terrible truth of his predicament: Ulthuan would never be his. Asuryan and the princes had both rejected him, and the common people had not flocked to his side as he had expected. No amount of spilt blood could conceal that the usurper Caledor had won. As the full force of his realization struck home, the resentment and frustration in the Witch King's heart coalesced into a terrible hatred that would remain with him for the rest of his days. Consumed by desperate rage, Malekith decided upon one last, ruthless bid for victory. He and his sorcerers would unbind the magic of the great vortex and unleash the full fury of the realm of chaos. If Ulthuan would not accept his will, it would be utterly destroyed. Such would be the price for their betrayal. Knowing that their fate was tied to that of the Witch King, the sorcerers agreed to this insane gambit, despite the danger of dealing with such untamable forces. Only one of his disciples, Urathian of Ular, saw the madness of Malekith's ploy and alerted Caledor to the doom at hand. The Sundering. As the Witch King's sorcerers stood upon the summits of their black towers and struggled for control of the vortex, the mages of Safri roused their own magic to thwart the spell of unbinding. Great forces shook the lands, the mountains trembled, and the seas heaved as dark and light waged a mystical battle. As night came, the stars obscured by flickering witchlights and coronas of magical energy, the Witch King and his coven exerted the last of their strength. It was then, at the very moment that the great vortex began to fail, that a new power entered the contest. Freed from their long stasis, Caledor Dragon Tamer and his trapped mages returned to the realm of the living. Instantly realizing Ulthuan's peril, they added their own incantations to that of the Phoenix King's wizards, and with a colossal release of magical energy, they dragged the vortex back into place once more. The backlash tore Ulthuan asunder. A tidal wave 1,000 feet high crashed upon the northern coasts, engulfing Nagarath and Tiranoc. Cities were washed away, and countless thousands perished. as the deluge swept down upon Nagarythe, the Witch King's followers used the last of their sorcerous power to ride out the storm. Energized with dark magic, their black citadels broke free and rose upon the frothing waves. Malekith's plan had failed, and his energy was spent. His kingdom lay beneath the waves, and his army was all but destroyed. Upon the floating castles of Nagarythe, the Black Arks as they would be called in later years, the Witch King and his minions fled the wrath of the cataclysm they had unleashed. North and west they travelled across the churning seas to the desolate wilderness of Nagaroth.